Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and along with my husky, hairy, huggable homos and friends, we review movies either current or classic on this show. And this week, we're very much in the current category with a review of Transformers Rise of the Beasts. Looking forward to talking about this one for sure. But before we do, let me introduce you to my fantastic co host. Jim Pugliafico is with us on the show this week. Hey, sweetheart, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Here again on another Tuesday night after work, ready to go, switch gears, and start them up and roll out on this movie.
All right, excellent. Well, so glad to have you here for this discussion. The wonderful William Lindis is also here. Hey, Will, how are you?
Feeling great. I am infused with the essence of the Allspark, and I'm really looking forward to seeing whether the movie that we're going to be discussing today, whether it auto botched things.
Auto botched things. Nice. That's a good one.
Yeah.
The Transformers puns. I would say keep rolling out, but we already used that one, so I can't do that one. How about we talk about this movie until all are one?
Yes, we
There we
all
go.
shall be one.
I
Oh,
absolutely see no Decepticons to that idea.
oh my goodness. All right. Well, let's maximize our time for talking about this movie by getting to it here in just a moment. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our format, we like to talk about movies completely spoiler free for about the first 15 minutes of our review, and then we give plenty of warning before we open things up to spoilers. So if you haven't yet seen Transformers Rise of the Beasts, fret not. Feel free to hang out with us for our initial discussion. We promise to protect your virginal innocence, at least where this movie is concerned. But all of that said, Jim, Will, let's do it. Here we go. Our discussion of Transformers Rise of the Beasts. All right, Jim. I know that you were completely not a fan of Transformers growing up because you sort of missed, being a kid in the
Yeah,
80s, but you have been around for, you know, like 9 Transformers films at this point. So I'm a little curious to hear your not only your setup for this movie, but your initial thoughts. We kind of hold things back so we can be surprised and
sure,
delighted on the
sure.
podcast. So tell us what you thought of the film, and just give us a little brief setup for those who are maybe asking, what the fuck is this movie all about?
Yeah, so you're right. I wasn't caught up as a kid in the '80s during the, kind of the rise of the Transformers and the whole, franchise and toys and everything else because I was like in my 20s, and I don't know, it just didn't catch my attention at the time. But so we've got this movie, which is, I think you said, Brad, it's like the ninth movie. Is that right? Um, in the whole franchise, the universe, I guess. But from what I understand, this movie is really part of kind of a reboot that started with 2018's Bumblebee movie, which I think we reviewed on the show, and I think we were all pretty positive on it, if I remember right at that time. So this is the direct follow up to that movie Bumblebee in this version of the Transformers verse. Um, so I'll just read the not to be too spoilery. I'll start by reading the IMDb synopsis. During the 90s, 1994, in fact, for this movie, a new faction of Transformers called the Maximals, which is, by the way, the beasts in the title of this movie, Transformers Rise of the Beasts. They join the Autobots as allies in the battle for Earth. So yeah, we have this film that stars Anthony Ramos, he's kind of the human lead, I guess, in this we'll call him, or one of the human leads. as Noah Diaz, kind of a new face, I think, to the Transformers verse. I don't think he was in Bumblebee at all, but we've seen him in musical stuff primarily. We saw him in Hamilton, the filmed version of the stage production, and we also saw him in the Heights, the movie that I think we were all pretty positive on as well. So, like Anthony Ramos in this, plenty of other fresh faces, I guess you could say, in the human characters here. But what we want to know is, right, who are the voice talent in this. We've got let's see, of course we've got Brad, you're gonna have to help me here with the characters. Optimus Prime, his is it Bill Cullen?
Peter Cullen.
Peter Cullen, sorry. Um, as Optimus Prime. We've got let's see. I'm trying to get all. Oh, here are the voice talent. Ron Perlman is, and I hope there's no spoilers in this cast listing, but Ron Perlman is Optimus Primal, one of the Maximals in this movie. Peter Dinklage is Scourge, which I didn't even know until the movie ended. Brad's like, "Hey, did you know Peter Dinklage played Scourge?" Scourge being kind of one of the baddies in this movie. Michelle Yeoh is in this one.
Yes.
Huge cast. Peter Davidson, Pete Davidson is in this. Just a lot of names that we'd recognize. The issue that I have with the voices here, they're all so synthesized for the voices of the Transformers that it's hard to tell. It's hard to like distinguish a Ron Perlman voice from a Peter Cullen voice from a Peter Dinklage voice, unless you're really really paying attention, because they all have that really deep, like processed voice. But yeah, so this movie, I don't think it didn't have the impact on me that Bumblebee had. Bumblebee was kind of an interesting film in this franchise. I thought it was really good. It was different than what had come before, but this movie almost feels like a throwback to almost what the movies were before Bumblebee. Like lots more action, I think. I didn't think the focus on the human characters worked nearly as well in this movie as it did for Bumblebee. I still think this is a fine Transformers movie. It'll work. Look, we know what we're getting when we get into these movies. I think Bumblebee was the anomaly that kind of exceeded expectations. This movie pretty much met the expectations that I expect for a Transformers movie. I think it's fine. It's certainly, if you're a fan of Transformers and this world, I think this is something you want to see, whether you go to the theaters to see it on the big screen. Again, there's a lot of action. There's a lot of machines banging together. CGI scorpions all over the place, whatever. And I don't even know what they're called. But yeah, I would say this is probably exactly what I expected. There were no surprises in this for me. As a matter of fact, it felt a little bit like some of the previous movies in terms of like its plot, and we've got to come together to face this giant villain that we need to vanquish. It felt very very same to some of those previous movies, just updated a little bit, and we get Bumblebee. But otherwise, I think this is a soft recommend for me.
All right. So soft, not quite semi recommend, but soft.
Yeah, soft recommend. Just short of semi. Yeah.
All right. Jim, thanks so much for giving us your your thoughts on the film. We appreciate that. Well, how about for you? How did this movie land or not?
So I'll start by saying that if you take the animated one out of the mix and you just talk about all of the other Transformers movies that have come out since Bay started the movies however many years ago, this is the second best Transformers movie. Now,
second best.
Does that mean that it's a good movie or not? I don't know. So Bumblebee was good. I'm a little lower on it than I know Brad. You really loved that Bumblebee, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Mm.
I was much higher on it than most of the other Transformers movies. I felt like this is a step in the right direction. If this is where the franchise is going, I can see my hooks being back into this. That's not where the franchise is going. This does feel in a lot of ways a return to form. Now, I will say this is still significantly better than that first run of Bay movies. And I think the reason for that is I liked the human characters in this more than I liked any of the who did we have? We had Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox, and then we had Mark Wahlberg. You know, I just really liked Anthony Ramos and the other lead in this, which was
Dominic Fishback.
Dominic Fishback. Yeah, I really liked them as Noah and Elena a lot. And so when they were just doing stuff, I could at least suspend some disbelief and enjoy it for what it was. The voice talents, I'm mostly there with you, Jim, in that a lot of them did sound just sort of like generally like Autobots roll out, like a little. It felt like a lot of the characters were sort of doing like Peter Cullen shtick, if that makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. To the point where Dinklage and as Scourge and Ron Perlman, I didn't really recognize their voices, and they felt like they were just sort of, I don't know. You could have cast just about anyone there. I will say, I kind of like Pete Davidson in this as Mirage. I think that type of character, we've seen them do sort of like the fun-loving, street-talking style Autobot in movies before, and it came across as not just grating, but honestly kind of offensive in some of the previous movies. And I think Davidson's character got to be that character without it. I enjoyed the character, and I enjoyed the character's arc, and I enjoyed his relationship with the Anthony Ramos character. I never felt really annoyed by Mirage, and that could have been definitely the other way around. The big fights are.
I wasn't annoyed.
I was not annoyed. The big fights were the big and loud fights were big and loud. I found myself. Some of them looked good. I mean, these effects all look good in a vacuum. I do get a little like disinterested by the color grading and just sort of the overall saturation of these movies, in that like everything just feels like it's got a patina of dullness over it. Like I would almost like for them to kind of more cartoonishly pop with color and give me something more to look at. So, but still, there's stuff in this movie that's worth watching. Again, the human leads are really good. Anthony Ramos is 100% a star on the rise. Hell, we're going to be seeing him. He's cast in Twister. They're doing like a sequel to Twister. He is cast in the Ironheart television show on Disney. We saw him originating the roles in Hamilton. We saw him in The Heights. Like, this guy is definitely on an upward trajectory, and I'm here for it. I really like seeing him as a leading man, as a kind of a front person in these movies. And I also really enjoyed, just a little side note, Toby Nwigwe, who plays Reek, who is just this guy. He was the friend who always had a Twizzler in his mouth in this movie. He's a really good musician. Like, that was like the best. Honestly, his music is way better than his role in this movie. So I would recommend people check out Tobe Nwigwe. He's very good. So I give this one a soft not recommend. Again, there are things that you can dig through and find for value, but I don't know. It didn't feel like it justified the experience for me.
All right. Well, Will, thank you so much for your thoughts as well. I think for me, I probably come down the most positive of the three of us on this film. You're right, Will. I did absolutely love Bumblebee, but this movie is very different from Bumblebee in that Bumblebee was like a almost like a buddy comedy movie, right? Like it was just one Transformer pairing up with one young girl and her friend and having an adventure. And yeah, there were a couple Decepticons, and yeah, there was a bigger overarching story, but it really centered on just a small sort of sphere of things that were happening. Everything was pretty well contained. In this movie, everything is blown up and cranked to 11. We have this giant threat in Unicron. It's in the trailers. That's not a spoiler. We have a lot more Transformers in this movie, like 20 more Transformers than Bumblebee had. They brought in a lot of folks to voice these Transformers. And I don't know. As a Transformers fan, since I was a kid, I really loved seeing Mirage brought to life on the big screen. I normally don't like Pete Davidson, but I actually really dug him as Mirage, to the point where I forgot I was listening to Derpy Pete Davidson do Pete Davidson. Like, I was like, oh, that is Mirage. Great. Michelle Yeoh as Air Razor, I fucking loved her in that role. And it was really good to see, again, her stars on the rise too. This is probably not another Oscar winning role for her, but I mean, it was really fun for me, and I liked it a lot. I do think I agree with you, Jim, a little bit, that Peter Cullen and Ron Perlman sound close enough when things are blowing up and the action is happening that sometimes it does get a little confusing if it's Optimus Prime or Optimus Primal. It's kind of like, wait, who said that again? Which character's on screen? But I would actually disagree a little bit that the rest of them all sound the same. I thought all of the Transformers had pretty distinct voices. RC was, very different from Air Razor. I actually appreciated that each of the different. Yeah, go ahead.
No, good.
Okay.
I just had
Actually, I saw you hold up your finger and start to talk. So but I actually appreciated the diversity that they brought to the different roles, without like making it too hammy or too freaking crazy or out there. The characters felt like their authentic selves, and I don't know. For me, like having grown up with those characters, I think I have a nostalgia base, right, that maybe taps into, that maybe for you, Jim, or for other folks who didn't grow up with it, maybe that's missing a little bit. So I appreciated what they did, sort of bring in some of the other bots. It was really cool having Mirage sort of be the central Transformer connected to the humans. For once, it wasn't fucking Bumblebee. Don't get me wrong, I love B. I love the Bumblebee movie, but it is a little played out at this point, like B being the central focus. We got a ton of Optimus in this film. I'll be honest, Peter Cullen is getting up there in age. I don't know how much longer he's going to be around to voice Optimus Prime in these movies. So the more Optimus we can get while he's around and able to work right now, I think, the better off we are. Anthony Ramos was great. Dominique Fishback, maybe less great, but I still enjoyed some aspects of her character. But I do agree, like every Transformer cartoon and every Transformer movie, the humans are absolutely the least interesting part of things. And I feel like this movie went out of its way to find reasons to give the humans something to do. And it just felt like my favorite Transformers were getting sidelined. And I'm like, no, let's go back to Mirage. Like, let's have Mirage do a thing. And, so as much as I like Anthony Ramos, I would have been fine if we had like gotten less of the human stuff, maybe seen less of that character. But all in all, I think this absolutely accomplished what it set out to. It's a big sort of galaxy-spanning threat. Peter Dinklage was amazing as Scourge. It was a little weird to bring in the Maximals and not the the evil versions. What are they called? I forget. Shit. I know. What? Predacons. Thank you. My brain can't find words. It was a little weird to have the Maximals and not the Predacons, but Minions of Unicron, that's okay. I'm all for it. They did a great job. So this was kind of a 3.5 star for me if you look at my Letterboxd rating. Not as good as Bumblebee, but still a fun watch. I definitely recommend it.
I one thing that you mentioned there, and I think it's is where maybe like I veered off for you a little bit, was I enjoyed for the most part the human stuff the most in this movie, and I think that's because they stuffed a few too many Transformers in this. Like, it's fun seeing the characters on screen, but like you think about the Maximals, right? Okay, you've got Optimus Primal, and you've got Air Razor, and then you also have a couple of additional ones that are sort of hanging around in the background. Like in the final fight, there's like a moment where final fight stuff is happening. We'll talk about what that is in spoilers, but it's a Transformers movie. There's a final fight, and two of the Maximals come running out, and I literally went, oh yeah, they're here too, because they had been given no real lines or no real anything to do for the bulk of the movie. And I feel like that does a little bit of disservice to those nostalgia elements, right? Like, if I want to see these characters show up in these movies, and this is true for any nostalgia property, you know, anything that I enjoyed it as a kid, I want to see them utilized, because when they're not, then it robs us the opportunity to see them used again in the future. X-Men did that with me, like the X-Men movies, the Bryan Singer movies. They kept throwing characters in the background and saying like, by the way, that's Jubilee. And it's like, well, shit, now I can't see Jubilee.
But I think that feeds into one of my big complaints about this movie, and we can talk more about it in spoilers, but we spend half the movie with the human characters when the movie is called Rise of the Beasts. What could we have done with that human screen time to really flesh out the Maximals and those different characters, right? Give Air Razor had a bigger role out of all of them, but like, Cheetor had some screen time, but like I would have loved, he's my favorite character from Beast Wars. I would have loved to have seen a lot more of him and a lot less of humans doing stupid human-y things. But that said, everything hits different for different people. I'm glad you enjoyed the human stuff for once. I do think the human stuff is typically a weaker component of these films as a series, though.
Absolutely. And a problem that we've seen in some of the Godzilla movies too. It's like, how do you get the humans to work or not work when combined with like the big thrashing around things, which are like the stars of the show? And it's a hard line to walk. And I don't think I think that it more often these movies, and when I say big movies, I'm talking about anything that's a kaiju, and a Transformer is a kaiju technically. I think that's a tightrope that these movies have to walk.
Yeah, I think the human characters here, good analogy, Will, to the Godzilla movies, especially the new ones that we got. The Millie Bobby Brown, relationship to her parents. I mean, we got some of the and who was the guy who in the first Godzilla movie?
Bryan Cranston, and then
and his son guy.
What was his? He's the guy from
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. The only one of those I liked was the Bryan Cranston character, which I won't give spoilers for Godzilla, but he wasn't in the movie very much. And in this one, you have the Noah Diaz character, which I really liked. I'm not sure we needed. I mean, Elena Wallace was fine. The actor Dominique Fishback was fine, but she seemed like such a caricature of characters we've seen before. She's the smart one with the that figures things out, and by the way, she might be a little bit of a love interest for the main character. Did we really? I don't know if we really needed that. It just felt so straw man-y kind of, we'll put this character in because these movies have to have this character, and here she is, this talented young actress is going to do this character. It was just very transparent to me, like why she was there, and didn't feel
transparency.
No, and the other stuff with the little brother. I mean, we've seen that 100 times. He gives him something to care for, and I don't know. It felt very like, I don't know.
Oh, it's
written
samey
by AI kind of stuff. Let's put some characters in this movie. But I just didn't really care for any of them. And to your point, Brad, I definitely would have liked to have seen them flesh out is it the Maximals? Is that what it is?
Yep.
Yeah.
I would have liked to see them flesh those out a little bit more. I like the Michelle Yeoh Air Razor character. I liked her. Optimus Primal, yeah, he's there, but like we don't really know a lot about him other than he's trying to protect his people, which is, yeah, we get it, but like, what's going on with you? Go ahead.
I would cut him out. You know what? I know this is Rise of the Beasts, Unless you seriously rework the script from what it was, I don't think that the Maximals really added anything to the narrative here, right? Like, they were the reason why there was a MacGuffin that they were then not really like part of the story of. So therefore, like, you could have easily given just literally any other character the basis for that MacGuffin and do something else. So it's sort of like, you have to go one way or the other, right? If
MacGuffin
you're
girl.
going to tell a story with like the human characters, then you need to spend some more time with less robots so that the relationships between the robot characters and the human characters would work more. So in that example, you could probably slash the Maximals out and let Elena and Noah have more time with the core group of like Transformers, right? Whether it be Elena spending more time with RC or whatever it is, like there's elements that you can play with. Or you reduce the human elements and you give the Maximals more time to play, right?
Yeah.
And I think that we're kind of divided on which way to go, but I think that we're all probably in the same mind that regardless of which preference of which road you go down, I think we all agree that this movie needed to have picked one of those roads, right? Like whatever that road is, I think there's a stronger version if you just edit.
Yeah. I agree. Well, fellas, it is getting increasingly more difficult to dance around certain plot points as part of these discussions. So how do you feel about making that transition into spoiler territory?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, spoilers for Transformers Rise of the Beasts are officially fair game. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, you'll see we have a little ticker at the bottom of the screen warning you that spoilers are happening. I am randomly babbling right now to give you a chance to step away if you haven't seen the movie. Come back in about 20 minutes for plugs at the end of the show. If you're listening to the magic of digital tape delay, use the time index in the show notes to skip ahead as needed. All of that said, Autobots, transform and roll out into spoilers territory. Let's fucking go. And we had a question. Hammy, welcome to the show, friend. Always good to see you. Thanks for being patient. Hammy says, howdy. I just want to know if Unicron punches a planet. What is the answer there?
I mean, I say punches. I don't think so, but we did see him basically eat a planet, right? And try to eat a second one. And I thought that was pretty cool. I thought like the way they represented Unicron's power in the universe, I thought was pretty cool. I did like that character, although he was one of the four characters. I want to go back to something I said where it's like with some of the, and Will said where like some of the characters were doing the Peter Cullen, or is it Peter Cullen? Is that right?
Yep.
The Peter Cullen shtick. It was really just the four characters. I think it was, of course, Optimus Prime, right? He's the real deal. But then you had Scourge, you had Optimus Primal, and you had the voice of Unicron, right? I thought those were the ones that were kind of in that range. The other ones, yeah. I mean, the other ones, characters had their own kind of voice and their own, you could kind of tell them apart pretty easily. But those four were definitely kind of doing the same thing. And those were probably the four that got the most screen time as well. So I think that's part of it. But I think that's a small quibble. But I did like the Unicron character, and he doesn't appear for a lot of the movie because there's so many other characters to service. But I mean, he's there for one thing. He's there to basically eat planets, and the way he does that, they show one at the beginning, and that's pretty cool. I thought it was really, really awesome the way they showed that.
Yeah, he's not to like draw too direct a line to it or whatever, but he's Transformers version of Galactus. His role is, at least in this, is to be cosmic threat that we have to stop before he does his thing. Because if he does his thing, it's game over. There's not like a way to stop him once he's there. So he's the ticking time bomb. He's the clock in the corner. We have to do whatever we need to do with our MacGuffin before the clock hits zero. And yeah, it's unfortunate that a lot of the more quirky or interestingly voiced characters showed up either later in the movie or were way underwritten in terms of like what they got in terms of lines. Because then you do have like the characters that do have most of the, I would say, plot development lines. Anything that has to do with moving the plot forward generally went through Optimus Prime, Optimus Primal, Scourge, or Unicron, right? And Mirage. Mirage is the other one kind of.
Don't
A
forget
little bit
exposition.
of Air Yeah.
Don't forget exposition machine Air Razor Michelle Yeoh.
That's true. Exposition machine. So I think that's why like the Michelle Yeoh and Pete Davidson roles are the most interesting, is because they're the two that were the most fleshed out of the sort of the voices that were different sounding. I mean, I was very interested to hear the actor that plays Danny from Ted Lasso show up.
Cristobal
Fernandez.
Yeah.
Cristobal Fernandez shows up. Yeah, he shows up as Wheeljack and gets like an interesting scene, and then also gets sort of relegated to and then he's also kind of there and they don't know what to do with him part of the Transformers.
Wait,
so it's
wait.
like,
did you just say relegated when talking about Danny Rojas?
Yeah, he got relegated.
That was amazing. That was so good. Football reference.
We've all learned what relegated means now in this world in this world of Ted Lasso and Wrexham.
Football is all spark. So I mean, yeah, so Wheeljack was really interesting to me until the movie was like, they got done introducing him and making him interesting. And then they're like, we no longer care about Wheeljack. So he's still going to be in this movie, and we're going to animate him doing some stuff, and we're going to give Cristobal some lines. But the movie stopped giving a shit about him after his introduction. And I think that was true of a lot of the characters that showed up in this. Like, to the point where it's like, I enjoyed seeing them here, but like, do anything with them.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is, but I still want to see whatever that movie is. It's why we like Bumblebee so much, because compared to all of these other Transformers movies that feel, again, I think this one is way stronger than most of the rest. So I'm definitely like shitting on this one hard for one that I actually think rises above most of the pack. But they do feel very much like movie by committee, movie by, we need to check a bunch of boxes. Let's see how many of these characters from the past we can shove into a movie while still doing all of these things. Bumblebee, for the movie that it tried to tell, it felt like it was a story first with character arcs, Bumblebee, and for the Haley Steinfeld character, all of those different things. And then the Transformer trappings helped enhance that story. And that's something that I really want to see more of out of this franchise going forward. And even if it's a big brawl fest, I there's room for that, but just I need it to be a little bit more character focused for me.
That definitely makes sense. I think, it's one of the strengths and unfortunately one of the weaknesses of this movie that it tried to right a lot of the wrongs from the Michael Bay films, right? Bumblebee was a test balloon to see if they could soft reboot this universe and get people interested in the films again, and they absolutely accomplished that. I mean, people are turning up for this movie. They want to see it. They're excited about it. This was their opportunity to expand on things, bring in a whole bunch of Transformers, fighting on screen. All the Transformers look visually distinct now. You can tell who is who instead of it just being a big morphing shape of like little triangles and everyone looks the same. And I also think they tried to bring in a lot of the different personalities of the, various Autobots and Maximals, and, all of that is great. I really think you can tell that the director and the folks who made this film A, wanted to sort of right the ship a little bit, and B, maybe had some personal passion for the IP. A really good example, Michael Bay, I'll never forgive him. 7 fucking movies in, Transformers The Last Night, introduces Unicron, the like, huge giant main enemy that like wants to destroy everything. He supersedes the Decepticons in terms of threat level. And what did Michael Bay turn Unicron into? Fucking Earth with some spikes sticking out. Not a
Yeah.
huge planet eating robot. I think we saw an image of like a curled up planet eating robot, on the screen as like a radar image of Unicron, underground. But this movie really took Unicron and made him just a massive threat. He was scary. He sounded a lot like Orson Welles' performance of Unicron from the animated movie back in '86. I just I don't know. I really appreciate some things that they tried to do here to make a real and true Transformers cartoon brought to live action CGI life here in a way that 7 fucking Michael Bay films didn't. Unfortunately, I think a lot of those things didn't land as well as they could have. We've already talked about some reasons why. I'd love to see the next film maybe be about like 2 or 3 of the Transformers and some humans and have it be a much smaller story again. I almost wonder if they should have done like a series of small Bumblebee-esque movies leading up to this, right? To give us the character stakes, to help us get to know the characters before all this happened. So maybe a little course correction could have helped there.
Absolutely. What this movie did was it took, or what this franchise did, and when franchise I really mean these last 2 movies, like sort of like from the soft reboot period, right?
Mm-hmm.
It took the smallest, most personal Transformers story possible, and then immediately followed it with the largest, most apocalyptic Transformers story possible. And so what I feel like we're missing in between is some sort of like ramp up and escalation. So maybe there's a movie in between where it's 2 or 3 of the Transformers now that are dealing with a couple of humans. And so now the stakes are a little bit bigger. The first couple of Decepticons are doing something. I don't know, whatever,
Yeah.
someone write that movie, but you could have then introduced some of those characters. So if let's say going to my example before, not say it has to be him, but let's say Wheeljack, Mirage, and RC are the 3 in that one, and they sort of tease Optimus or whatever. Then when we get to this one, we've already got that base, so that when RC and Wheeljack come out and do stuff, it's like, oh, cool, that's awesome. They're the ones from that last movie I just watched. Same as like when Bumblebee was doing stuff in this movie, we didn't have to get a lot of build up on who Bumblebee was because we knew who Bumblebee was from the previous movies.
It'd be like if Iron Man came out and then the very next movie was Avengers Endgame.
Right.
You just you wouldn't know the characters as well. You wouldn't care about the characters as much. It seemed like this huge escalation of threat level and galactically important events, and you just don't get much of that ramp up into that. So,
and I did get a chance to see, like, it's nice from a nostalgia point to see some of these characters depicted, but I want to see what this world's version of these characters are, so like that. So the example you gave of like Marvel, right? You do Iron Man, you do a few more. We can see what Marvel's version of Iron Man, what their version of Thor, what their version of Ant-Man like are, so that by the time you get to the big stakes movie, it's like, and you throw all those characters together, you kind of get a feeling like, oh, I bet you Ant-Man will respond to it this way. Let's see what happens when we shake the jar with Ant-Man in it. And so I didn't get that same feeling here, where like when Wheeljack showed up on screen and he was standing next to a Maximal, I didn't know, like, well, how are these characters supposed to feel about each other? Like, because the movie didn't give me enough like context for it, and I had to sort of maybe piece things together with cartoon knowledge, but I didn't know how much that was translated, and also how much of that was going to be modified by the Bay movies too, which also introduced characters. And so so I think that's where I'm getting at. Just just pace it out a little more.
What do you guys think of the Stinger scene? So we had a Stinger scene where the character of Noah gets hired into this super secret. He thinks he's going for a legit job interview, and lo and behold, he's becoming hired by this super secret organization called GI Joe or as GI Joe. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's going to be maybe the next movie is not going to be what you guys kind of want to see. It's going to be some kind of crossover with GI Joe.
I hope that it's like a GI Joe movie with like maybe one or two Transformers making a guest appearance, and not like an actual Transformers and GI Joe, like everybody comes together. You know, that I don't know. I think that would be a mess. Listen, as a kid, I mixed my He-Man toys with my Transformers. I loved crossovers, but I had my He-Man cartoon to know who the fuck everybody was, and I had my Transformers cartoon to understand why the Transformers, you know, are having a civil war, right? And that would help me make intelligent decisions about how to play. I think immediately jumping from this movie into a GI Joe and Transformers crossover film, it's a mistake. Give it time to build and marinate.
Yeah,
Are they soft rebooting the GI Joe films? I don't fucking know. I don't know how it all works or ties in, or I don't know, and I really hope it's not what the next movie's going to be.
I didn't see any. I didn't see the GI Joe movie, or I don't think any of the G. Maybe there was more than one. I don't know, but I don't recall them as being so successful that they want to, team up with the, the Transformers. But Hammy's got a comment here if you want to read that. I guess the GI Joe Transformers collab is from the comics. He said the GI Joe Transformers comic was pretty sweet back in the day. Will a movie be as good? I have doubts.
So
Such
back in
doubts.
a lot of doubts, and mainly because of the history of these properties, right? So back in like '87, I believe it was Larry Hama, who also did a bunch of like the Wolverine comics, was writing the GI Joe comics for Marvel, and Transformers was also a Marvel property at that point. Not that they originated there; they were Hasbro, but Marvel had the comic book rights for GI Joe and Transformers. So they did a 4-issue limited series, and the first issue of that was basically like all of the GI Joes like fighting Bumblebee and fucking him up. Like, it's like they blow him into pieces. And like at the very end of that first episode, it's like, holy shit, this is dark. Like they just killed a Transformer. Things get better and do this, but it was very well written. It was very good. There's no way they can do that story right now for a couple of different reasons. First of all, the comic rights have shifted over to IDW, which is a complete for both Transformers and GI Joe. So they still live in the same universe, but the original story is owned by a completely different company, and I don't know that they're going to be releasing the rights for that particular story. Maybe, I don't know. But second, like a story that is about Bumblebee getting blown up and put back together feels like now a retread. We just had that, right?
Twice.
Twice. Yeah.
Twice.
So
I mean, he literally dies and is brought back to life by an energy infusion in both fucking movies.
He's only in these movies to be killed and brought back again. That's because he's come on, he's the emotional heart of the Transformers.
Bumblebee is VW Jesus. So I do think that like the stinger itself, I should have rolled my eyes hard at it. And I think if it wasn't for the fact that once before there was a version of it that absolutely whipped ass and that I really enjoyed, I would have rolled my eyes like right out of their sockets seeing this. But because once I've seen it done before, and granted it was 30 years ago, I don't know. I'm holding out hope. I don't know what it would be. I don't know if it would be a G.I. Joe movie featuring Transformers, a Transformers movie featuring G.I. Joe, its own little thing. If this was just a stinger just for the hell of it. I don't know if this is a reboot of the G.I. Joe universe. I don't know where any of this fits in because to your point, like all of this feels remarkably rushed. Like I haven't learned enough of the world status quo for them to give me like shift to that status quo. That said, when that scene started, like the guy's like got his back at the table and he's like, so, and I'm like, oh, cool. He's gonna, at the end of this thing, he's gonna give him a business card that says GI Joe. Okay, at the end of this, he's gonna get. And I sat through that whole fucking scene waiting for it to happen because, like, they spent the longest time with him going, "I bet you don't know why you're here." Like, just like, okay, he's obviously here because you're GI Joe. Just get on with it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, they really dragged that shit out.
They did, and I thought it was going to be Sector 7, which was basically G.I. Joe in the last movie. And so I was expecting the business card to be Sector 7, and then when it was G.I. Joe, I was just like, well, why do we have G.I. Joe if there's a Sector 7 that essentially does the same thing? But, you know, whatever.
Well, look, if we're doing mashups between Hasbro properties, why don't we get the Transformers My Little Pony like mashup? That would be something I'd be down for. Or, you know, Transformers, you know, Magic the Gathering, whatever.
I can see it now, like Optimus Prime like falls off of a flying machine and he's like tumbling down through the sky, and all of a sudden this glittery rainbow comes out of nowhere and hoists him up and carries him safely down to Earth, where a squadron of flutter ponies come down and they're like, Optimus Prime, we couldn't let you die. The power of friendship saved you.
So interestingly enough, so I said that right now IDW has the comic book rights for Transformers and GI Joe, a couple of other places where they live right now. My Little Pony is part of that. Dungeons and Dragons, Star Trek comics are through IDW. Godzilla, Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yep.
So you could technically shove any of those in here as well. And you know what? I'm almost of a mind that if you're gonna rush it too much, fucking just go for it. Like at this point, like if you're gonna do Transformers versus G.I. Joe and you were to throw My Little Pony in there too, I'm kind of into that.
The bronies.
So we're hearing from a new listener to the show who just discovered it within the last couple of weeks. He's not in the live chat, but he is messaging me. A very handsome man named Alex from Boston, and he says there is a Transformers and My Little Pony mashup comic. He owns it. It is a thing that has happened.
I'm a genius after. I'm a second genius, I guess. All my genius ideas have already been taken.
Now I almost need to seek this out just to see what the fuck it looks like, because that would be insane.
Write that movie treatment, Brad.
There are a lot of these kind of like weird little mashups that exist out there. There's a horror comic that existed before Freddy versus Jason that was essentially like Freddy versus Jason versus the evil, like Evil Dead, and that was Ash versus Freddy versus Jason, and so those characters got to do it. There's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Star Trek crossing over. There's some wild shit out there. And the fun thing about comic books is like it plays better, I think, on page than on a like a big screen. Like, let's take this serious experience.
All right, I got to do a thing. I just asked Chat GPT to write this movie. Are you ready?
Oh, it already did. It already did.
But you got to do an announcer voice. You got to do an announcer voice.
Okay. The title of the movie, by the way, is Transformers: Harmony Unleashed. Okay. When an unexpected cosmic event merges the worlds of Cybertron and Equestria, the heroic Autobots and the magical ponies must join forces to defend both their realms from a common threat. With the power of friendship and the strength of technology, they embark on an epic adventure that will test their bonds and determine the fate of two worlds tied together through the magic of friendship.
Nice. I guarantee you there's a slash fic out there on the internet that starts with that log line and turns into like touching gay sex by page 4.
Maybe. Yeah. Oh, goodness. All right. Well, listen, if we're talking Transformers and My Little Pony mashups at this point, I think maybe we've gotten all the blood we're going to get from this Robo Turnip. Any final comments? Or are you guys ready to move on to some plugs?
Ready to
Let's move on.
Right. Cool. Well, Great conversation, super fun. Jim, Will, thank you so much for diving deep into Transformers. I know that I was the one that was kind of pushing for this movie most out of the three of us, so I really appreciate that you took one for the team, and maybe you liked it, maybe you didn't, but here we are. But let's talk about some things we know that we love and we want to put on everybody's radar. Of course, this is the plugs section, where we talk about things that we really enjoyed and we hope you'll enjoy too. So let's kick things off by going to Will. Will, what is your plug this week?
Yeah, so I'm plugging something that we've talked about a little bit on this show before, but we didn't really go too deep into it. And this is a plug, so I'm not going to go too deep in it now either. But back at South by Southwest, in that set of episodes, I know the two of you talked about Blackberry, which is the latest biopic. I'm marketing that term. I want it to stick, about sort of the history, not the history, but sort of like the rise and fall of
Origins,
BlackBerry
yeah.
as a brand. It's really good. It's honestly, of the different biopics that have come out this year, this, Flamin' Hot, Air,
Tetris.
I feel like the Tetris, I think this probably lands at the top of my stack. I think it's very compellingly written, very compellingly done. I especially like the Jay Bear Show performance, kind of the lead, one of the two lead roles as Mike. And honestly, Glenn Howerton's amazing in this as well. Just super good movie, very watchable, very engaging, never feels like it's a dry history lesson of a movie. You're always sort of like, ooh, what's going to happen next? It's available for rent. So I think you can see it through rent it through like Apple TV or like Amazon Prime or whatever. You can just find it in the places that you can rent for like $5.99 right now. And it's good. It's really good. You should watch it.
That's awesome, Will. We absolutely loved Blackberry, and I'm so glad you got a chance to catch up with it. Jim, we might have been cross talking there. Sorry.
No. One of Will, you caught on. It was one of our favorites coming out of South by this past year. That probably didn't get the ballyhoo that some of the other ones did. Like Flaming Hot and Tetris and so forth. But I think it was really like of a pretty tired genre. This one kind of stood above. So I really liked it. It probably will visit it again when we have some time to watch it.
Yeah, great plug, Will.
And I had a BlackBerry.
So did I.
Makes it great.
I was just reminiscing with a friend today about how much I miss my BlackBerry because my typing on a touchscreen keyboard is just atrocious. I spend more time editing than I do fucking typing.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Like I love my specifically branded phone, and I love everything about it except for I hate how my fat thumbs type on this damn thing. You kind of miss that BlackBerry click, right?
Yep.
And how shitty the autocorrect can be.
Oh God, tell me about it.
Yeah, I'd almost rather have my mistype than some of the stuff it comes up with.
I have to kill autocorrect on mine because of that same reason. So so instead mine is just there will be a poorly typed word with a red underline under it that hopefully I can go back and click, and then it'll have like in one of the three selections the approximate thing.
Better than some word you don't even notice. Better than some word that's totally out of context that you don't even notice because it already corrected it like 4 words ago.
So here's the thing. I, for years now, have been programming a shortcut into my specifically branded phone's keyboard so that anytime the appearance of the word duck happens, it changes it to fuck automatically because I never mean duck. Except for when we went to the duck pond thing in Boston, in which case my dad is like, "What is a fuck pond, son?"
What is a fuck?
And I was like,
"Is that some bear thing?" It's like,
it's a bear summer pastime.
And he knows about bears. He's been to a bear bar with us, when he visited once. But I was like, "Oh, Dad, that was supposed to be duck pond," and then it was fuck pond again, and I'm like, I give up. But specifically branded phone company just had a keynote a week ago. and revealed that you can now type the word fuck without it changing it to duck, and the internet lost their mind. So I feel like I'm a little ahead of the game, but I never had that problem on BlackBerry. I'm just going to say that. BlackBerry for the win. Anyway,
Right.
Will, awesome plug. Thank you so much. Babe, what have you got this week?
Well, unexpectedly, I have a plug that comes at the intersection of basically three things that I really enjoy. One is short films. You guys know that I'm a big fan of short films, film festivals. I love going to film festivals or participating in them however we can. And a place nearby, not too far from where we live, called Palm Springs, California. So what I found was a Palm Springs International Film Society short festival called Short Fest. I just stumbled across this today and I said this would be a perfect plug. We talk about how we want to, we go to South by every year. Sometimes we go to Fantastic Fest. We participate in Sundance sometimes. So we're trying to find other ways to participate in some of these festivals, and this was the perfect opportunity. So I looked into it. It is in Palm Springs coming up this month in June 20th through 26th. I was looking into the passes because it is close enough where if we wanted to, I guess we could go out there and buy passes to this. And, I looked at the pass prices and they're kind of what you'd expect, top tier. $500 gives you everything as a patron, and then they go down to like college student pass, $100. But they had this one that's $75. You buy it online. It's a virtual Best of Fest badge, which gives you a selection of the award winners and audience favorites from the festival that you can virtually watch. So that's something I'm strongly considering. So if you want to check out some short films, if you're in that area, I know we have a lot of friends in that area, support this festival. I think it sounds really cool. I don't really know any of the films that are playing. I didn't look through the whole list, but it's called Short Fest 2023, and it's in Palm Springs coming up this month. By the way, that virtual piece I talked about, the virtual stuff actually gets screened during the week after July 4th. So July 7th through 13th.
How cool. I didn't realize that Palm Springs had non-outdoor
Non-LGBT.
walking LGBTQ plus events. But that's very cool that they have a film festival. We were just out there not too long ago, so I don't know that we want to drive 7 hours, 2 weeks from now, but very cool that you can do it virtually at least, and maybe we plan for it next year.
Yeah, sure. Move our schedule around.
There we go.
I'm
Maybe
down
we'll
to do this virtual one. Let's.
Well, maybe next year you bring Scott and we'll rent like a little Airbnb with a pool or something, and we'll watch movies all day and then get in the pool and the hot tub at nights.
Ooh, yeah, we'll do the yes, we could do that in Palm Spring, but now I'm also thinking like we do a Tucson visit and we just do like the first Tucson Bear Fest. It's just the four of us watching movies, a bunch of movies.
Yeah.
We make it work, right?
That
There's
works
ways
for
to
me.
make a lot of these happen. Yeah,
it would be great to offer you a guest room for once. You and Scott.
Yeah.
So feel free to anytime avail yourself. We'll make that happen. But
I'll have to partake.
There we go. Hammy says Movie Bears pool cast.
Yes.
am in. Oh my gosh, that's a phenomenal idea.
Yes.
Let's do it. Well, not to make the third plug of this plug segment all about film festival stuff, but that's exactly what's happening. I was going to talk about Jedi Survivor, the video game, which is a really great Star Wars story. But then I saw that a movie we saw at South by actually just recently came out on Hulu and is available to watch. And I think everybody should check this film out, especially if you are a fan of the food product that this movie is all about. The movie is called Flamin' Hot and is all about the origin story of the Flamin' Hot Cheeto, which then turned into like all kinds of other Flamin' Hot products. It's a very funny film. Me with comedy, usually I do not like comedies. I laughed a lot in this one. And it's a really heartwarming and just fun fucking story. It's also got the Allstate guy in it. So, I mean, how can you go wrong? It's available on Hulu right now. So if you have a Hulu subscription, take a chance on this movie. It's something that, if you like Flamin' Hot Cheetos, and, you know, I think a lot of people do, you're going to learn a lot of interesting things about how those came about and how Frito-Lay like took a chance, right, on a whole new product line, but also took a chance on a person, which I think in the world of corporate America is pretty much a crap shit show a lot. So it was, I don't know, it was really fulfilling for me to see this film. Loved it quite a bit, rated it very highly on Letterboxd. If you want to go read my review, it's there. We don't get money from Letterboxd, I promise. This is how I psych myself up to keep rating and reviewing movies there. But yeah, Flamin' Hot, definitely worth a couple hours of your time.
Also throw out there, Brad, you mentioned it's on Hulu. It is also on Disney Plus.
Oh, perfect. Yeah,
So
I
you
guess
got a
that's
couple
right.
of avenues.
Yeah, you got a couple different ways. I would just say they gave us bags of Flamin' Hot Cheetos at the movie. It really enhanced things. So go get yourself a snack size bag or a big bag, depending on how many you want, and eat you some Flamin' Hot Cheetos while you watch this film. Chef's kiss. It'll be great.
Next time you guys come visit, I'll see if Scott can make one of these for you. He makes these most amazing like cheese balls, like the type that have it's usually a type of cheese with it could be like pesto and then kind of wrapped in almonds, and you'd use it as for dips and stuff like that for parties. And he makes this really fantastic one that is done with sort of soft, soothing kind of a cream cheese middle, but then the Flamin' Hot Cheetos crumbled up and done as the coating on the outside, so you get that like creamy and that spicy, and it's super good. And now that y'all are on kind of a Flamin' Hot kick, I think y'all would like it.
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
I never would have bought any Flamin' Hot products until we saw this movie, got our sample. I'm like, these are pretty damn good. And now I buy them all the time. It's crazy.
He does.
So
we have a chip.
Great marketing, Frito-Lay. Great marketing.
We have a chip problem in this house because our roommate, Kevin,
we do.
That's his primary food, I think. So there's like 20 bags of chips.
Yeah.
But I kept seeing like several bags of Flamin' Hot Cheetos appear. And I'm like, Kevin, what the fuck? Do we really need all these Flamin' Hot Cheetos? And Jim's like, babe, that was me. And I'm like,
totally me.
Okay. All right.
I'm the problem. It's me.
And then I backpedaled. I'm like, oh, well, no, that's great, honey. That's not a problem at all. So anyway. Well, listen, this has been a super fun show. A big shout out to Hammy. Also, Ben Woolley, we didn't read your comment earlier. I'm so sorry, but he said, howdy, 3 of the sexiest bear men, coming from a sexy bear man, Ben. That means a lot. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Hammy, good to have you with us as always. Alex and everybody else who is jumping in. We didn't get to read every comment, but we always appreciate what you folks bring to these live broadcasts. They make it a lot more fun for us and give us some fun stuff to work up with. So thank you for that. If you primarily check out the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., please continue to do so. But we'd love to have you in these live chats with us if you're ever available on a Tuesday evening. I know we recorded a weird time for some folks. You might not be out of work yet, but 6:40 p.m. Pacific time this time of year. Come join the fun, be part of the conversation. If you can't do it, though, we super get it. You can be part of the conversation online. We're on Twitter at MB Podcast. Find our Transformers live broadcast tweet. Comment on that. We'd love to engage with you. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search for Movie Bears Podcast. Add your comments to our video recording there. We'd love to chat with you there as well. And then, of course, our personal accounts. Let's tell you a little bit how you can connect with us between now and our review of The Flash next week. Jim, where can people connect with you?
You mentioned Letterboxd earlier. You can find my movie ratings on Letterboxd on my handle at JJP Out West, all one word. You can also find me on Twitter under that same handle at JJP Out West, and on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico, right here.
All right. Thanks so much, babe. Will, how about for you? Oh, you're on mute.
I was on mute. Okay, so you can find me on Facebook. Look for William Lindis. You can find me on Letterboxd. Look for William Lindis, or my profile there is under the name Fundamental. I'm honestly not using Twitter, Instagram much. I'm sort of tanking Twitter on purpose right now, so you can look for me there or not. But at this point, I'm in fuck around mode. And you can also find me on TikTok. I'm at the Movie Bear, where I'm basically just like mostly shirtless and doing regular meme shit. So come join me there.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Will. Folks, you can find me on Facebook. I'm the Brad Harris that likely has bear/chub/chaser/otter/dolphin/ etc. friends in common with you. Please just send a message first so I know you are not a clever bot trying to trick me into somehow letting you hack my account. You can find me on Twitter at iBradPro, as well as on Letterboxd, again at iBradPro. I rate every movie I see. Sometimes, if I can be bothered, that sounds elitist. Fuck. Sometimes, if I have a little extra time and I have the energy, I will write a review, but I at least give a star rating to every movie I see. So feel free to follow me there, and we will see you all next week. Go see The Flash if you want to. If you don't want to, tune in next week anyway, and we'll tell you if we think it's a train wreck. And we will see you all next time. Goodbye, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.